original art, Sam Kenney thought that was a good idea. He said, okay. So he called the most powerful person that he knew, and that was this lady, Ruth Carter Stevenson, who was, we know her as Stevenson. Her name in those days was Johnson, Ruth Johnson. This is Amon Carter's daughter. And she was on the board of the brand new Amon Carter Museum. It had just been opened about 18 months. She was on the board there. She had helped design the building. She was a collector. Sam Kenney was her neighbor and close friend. So he asked her to help him. He said, let's redecorate this suite for the Kennedys. And she said, she was a Republican, by the way. She did not support President Kennedy at all. But she thought that that was fine because it would help Fort Worth. It would cast Fort Worth in a better light. So she agreed to help. This is an earlier photo of Ruth Stevenson. This is her dad, Amon Carter, in case you haven't seen him in a while. There he is. This is Amon Jr., her brother, and her mother, Nanetta. And this was a pure Texas power family. I mean, they had it all. They had wealth, they had influence, they had privilege. So this is the kind of background that Ruth Carter Johnson had. She enlisted this man. This is Mitch Wilder, and Mr. Wilder was an art professional. He was the first director of the Amon Carter Museum when it opened in 1961. He's the guy they hired to get this museum off the ground. So, and he basically worked for Ruth Johnson, so she said, I want you to help us. So that's the team that was assembled. And out of this collaboration came an art exhibition for the President and Mrs. John F. Kennedy, and there was actually a small catalog printed of this art show. Copies of it were left in the room for the Kennedys to find, which I'll talk about in just a minute. Down here you'll notice it says the Presidential Suite, Hotel Texas, Fort Worth, 22 November 1963. And this is the checklist of the exhibit. This is comprised of 16 works of art. It was 12 paintings and 4 sculptures. Most of the art in this show came from private homes in Fort Worth. I think 5 pieces came from museums, from the Amon Carter Museum and from what we used to call the Fort Worth Art Center. That was our other museum back in those days. Today it's called the Modern Art Museum of Fort Worth, but back then it was called the Fort Worth Art Center. So they supplied some of it, but most of this art came out of private homes. And we'll just look at some of the better known names. Raoul Dufy, he was a French painter from the 30s. Thomas Akins and his painting Swimming, which is still at the Carter Museum. It's a major American painting from the 19th century. Marston Hartley was one of the artist representatives, an early American modernist painter. Franz Kline, abstract expressionism. John Marin, again, early modernism. Claude Monet, everybody knows Claude Monet. He was the founder of the Impressionist School in France. Henry Moore, very famous English sculptor. Pablo Picasso, probably at that time, in 1963, the most famous artist in the world, and so we had a piece by him that we were able to include in the exhibit. There was a piece in there by Charles M. Russell, which I'll show you in a moment. Star of the show, Vincent van Gogh. Ruth Carter Johnson owned one. She had bought it right after the war. Brought it back to Fort Worth. Her dad hated it, but she loved it. And later on, when she sold it, she just told me one time, I wish Dad could have lived long enough to find out how much I sold that thing for. So I know she made money on it, but in 1963, Ruth had the Vincent van Gogh in her private collection in her home over here near Rivercrest Golf Course. So this is the lineup. It was a pretty powerful lineup that they were able to assemble in a very short period of time. This is the Picasso piece. It's called The Angry Owl, and it's a bronze. It was cast by Picasso in 1950. It was in a private collection of a couple that lived out by Ridgely Golf Course. And they were putting this thing together so quickly that they were doing anything they could to get it done. Ruth went out there with her station wagon. They seat belted this thing in and took it downtown and hauled it up to the suite. I mean, that's how quick this thing came together. It was quick. This is Sam Kenney in the entryway to Suite 850. You can see the owl has been installed here on this credenza, and this was the Monet portrait. It's called Portrait of the Artist's Granddaughter. It's painted about 1878, and we'll look at that again here in just a minute. What's interesting is that during this frenetic week before the Kennedys got here, all of this activity about putting this little art show together was reported and covered extensively in the papers. Both the press and the Star Telegram wrote about what these people were doing. So even though this art show was only meant for two, and those were the only two people who were ever supposed to see it were President Kennedy and his wife, everybody in Fort Worth knew what was up because it was reported in the papers. We'll look at the art. This is the Picasso owl that was put there by the front door right beneath the Monet portrait, and here they are together. This was supposed to be what the Kennedys saw when they first walked in, and it was supposed to tell them, aha, there's something interesting here. You know, you should kind of watch for what's next. Didn't quite work out that way, but that was the idea. This is the living room. There's that game table I pointed to a minute ago. This is where they install some modern stuff. These are modern American paintings. This is a work by a man named Lionel Feininger. This is a Franz Klein piece by Morris Graves. TV by Philco. I remember those. This is the Lionel Feininger piece that was in the living room. It's called Manhattan 2, and it's based on the New York City skyline scene. It's very abstract and quite beautiful. And over in the corner, they had the little Klein and the Morris Graves pictures. Here they are. And these are in the exhibit at the Carter. The works I'm showing you here are the very works that have been brought back to Fort Worth for our exhibition. In the living area, this mirrored wall had these little wooden pedestals right here, and they had these Chinese-y looking figures. They took those off, and they installed other sculptures there. There were 3 sculptures in the living room. Here they are. This is the Henry Moore piece called 3 Points. This is by a California artist named Jack Zajac. It's called Small Bound Goat. And this little nude figure is by an Italian artist named Eros Polini, who was very collectible back then in the 60s. So they took the small bound